Beautiful. And welcome members and guests to another ShareWise webinar. We're very fortunate today to be joined by the Executive Chair, Jayne Shaw. We're going to be talking about some biotech stock today. So obviously BCAL Diagnostics, ticker code BDX, is been performing quite well of recent, done a recent cap raise and commitment of $10 million as well. I think for a lot of those investors that haven't really quite heard the story, Jayne, for yourself, just what's your involvement with the company and how long you've been involved?
Okay, well, thank you for your interest, everybody, in BCAL Diagnostics. So my background is I was originally a nurse in the UK, clearly apparent from the accent. And I came to Australia and I was the director of nursing and then the CEO of 2 private hospitals. And basically at that time, 25, 30 years ago, women who were identified with breast cancer, it wasn't a specialised surgical procedure. You know, general surgeons, you'd do an appendicectomy, breast surgery, then a vein removal. So most women would just have radical mastectomies, which is quite confronting for women. A few years later, I was carpooling, single parent with another mother, and she got breast cancer in her 30s. And unfortunately, at 35, she passed away. And I have been involved in healthcare most of my life, and I sold a company, we'd listed it, and I bought Sydney Breast Clinic with Ron Phillips, who's the ex-Minister for Health. Now, Sydney Breast Clinic is a multidisciplinary centre for the early detection of breast cancer. And 20 years ago, if you had a lump, that clinic was very pioneering in its day. You'll be told whether you had breast cancer or not. You'd start the treatment earlier and it would lead to improved outcomes. So I've owned Sydney Breast Clinic for the last 20 years. And about 14 years ago, the standard of care then was a mammogram for the early detection of breast cancer. And we knew that it would move to a molecular test. We've had a blood test for prostate cancer in Australia since 1989. And we were still compressing breasts in metal plates, which is the standard of care for mammogram. And we knew it would evolve. And Ron, myself, co-founded BCAL Diagnostics. And for the last 14 years have been working on the development of a blood test to detect breast cancer. And we're very excited. It's been a long time in development and we'll be launching the test later this year. So it's been a long journey. It's purpose-led. We're very passionate about getting this test to market and it's long overdue.
Absolutely, long overdue. Absolutely. And you can definitely hear the passion in your voice, Jayne. So we really appreciate you coming on board with us today. Just for those members and guests that are new to our webinars and interviews, if you want to be asking questions, we will get to those at the very end. But more or less for yourself then, Jayne, how does BCAL Diagnostics technology differ from other diagnostic solutions currently available?
Okay, so if you have, so the standard of care for women from 40 to 75 is a mammogram. And as I said, it involves 2 metal plates, it's compression, and about 50% of women eligible for a mammogram don't have a mammogram because it's painful. There's ethical issues. It's quite invasive for those who haven't been through the procedure. So it's for women from 40 to 75, and a lot of the mammograms are done in private clinics, you know, Sydney Breast Clinic, IMED, Sonic, all those clinics. The government has a national screening program, the breast cancer screening program, where you can go and have a 2D mammogram. So at the moment, you can have a 2D mammogram, a 3D mammogram with tomosynthesis, which means that the images are more accurate. You can also have an ultrasound. You can also have a contrast mammogram. So this means where you have a dye injected into your arm whilst you have the mammogram that has high sensitivity. And then if you have a family history, you can also have an MRI, but they're very expensive and hard to access. Our test is going to be positioned alongside a mammogram as another diagnostic tool, because if we go out and say we're replacing the standard of care that has been the standard of care for 30 years, we're kidding ourselves. So we've been working with clinicians, breast surgeons, breast physicians, oncologists, general practitioners on the actual market access and how we introduce this into the medical, clinical communities and also into the patient community. And so it will be alongside a mammogram initially as another diagnostic tool.
And how has the uptake been in the clinical community as to opposed to the patient community? Has there been a major uptick in one over the other, or they've both been probably unison?
So we've been very fortunate because I've been involved with breast cancer for the last 20 years. Most of the breast surgeons in the Sydney area have worked at Sydney Breast Clinic.
Okay.
We have basically developed our test alongside the clinicians. We were privately funded for the first 8 years. And everybody, or many people, work pro bono apart from the scientific team. And we've been very fortunate to develop the test alongside the clinicians all the way through. There's about 200 breast surgeons in Australia. We're working with about 100 of them now. And our clinical study sites have involved or do involve Sydney Breast Clinic, Lifehouse, RPA, Peter MacCallum Centre in Melbourne, Monash. We've got about 13 sites around Australia where women have been, Westmead, have been providing their blood samples alongside mammograms routinely. So our clinical studies have been clinically led, our protocols. So we've been working, if the clinicians don't have confidence of this test, we haven't got a test. As a female, I would like a blood test, but if the doctor says it's not clinically validated, then there's no point. So clinically led, and we've been involving women from the advocacy groups over a period of time.
Wow, well, that's really exciting. Well, obviously for investors, then what's the next milestones we should expect over the next 6 to 12 months?
Okay, so the milestones for the company, we've been a research and development company for about the last 13 years. And so for the last 12 months now, we've been working towards transferring from an R&D company to a commercial company. So one where we've been progressing the scientific development to now one where we will be providing a service. So an industrial healthcare company. We've got our own laboratory here in North Ryde, which is very exciting. And our milestones now really around the path to commercialisation and revenue generation. So we are introducing the test to market as an in-house IVD. What that means is that we have to have an accredited laboratory with NATA accreditation. And we're well advanced with that. We're going for accreditation in September, so that's a key milestone for us. Market access, working with our clinicians in terms of the sites. We're going to initially start a soft launch December this year, Sydney and Melbourne, get our logistics, making sure everything is refined and works well. And then we'll be really opening up the centres February when everybody's back from leave and building the tests over time. So it's really getting the commercial drivers and the operational KPIs within the laboratory working efficiently. From a clinical perspective, it's very important that we have peer-reviewed publications on our scientific data, because to be fair, we could say anything's good, but unless the peers, peer-reviewed journals. So we've got one publication ready to go, and we're working on the scientific data. So we hope to have 3 or 4 manuscripts, within the next 3 to 6 months. People want to know where they're going to access the test. So at the moment, we're Sydney Breast Clinic and a centre in Melbourne, and we're obviously working with potential commercial partners, and we'll be making those announcements over the period of time. So lots of different milestones and collection of samples, and we'll be providing information to women who want to, have access to the test when it's available.
Absolutely. And so do you see Melbourne and Sydney being the key growth driver areas, or obviously is that where we're just going to launch at the moment and scale further later on?
So again, it comes back to the clinical market entry. We're entering the markets in multidisciplinary breast cancer centres. And the reason we're doing that is because if you go for a mammogram, and one of the big areas with breast cancer at the moment is breast density. Your breast density can go from A to D, which basically means that if you're a D, your breast imaging white and very hard to detect. 71% of breast cancers are in women with dense breasts.
Wow.
So if you have dense breasts of a mammogram, you normally would have an ultrasound or a contrast mammogram. And as I said, we're positioning this test as another alternate diagnostic test, which is very important. We'll be launching initially where our key opinion leaders are, to make sure the general practitioners that are referring into that can talk to our clinicians. So that's why it's Sydney and Melbourne. We do have collection centres at the moment in Orange, and to be really honest, it's the women in the regional areas that need this test because they don't have accessibility. So we're launching an alignment with our clinicians, and then we'll be moving that out to where our clinical sample sites are, where we've been collecting the samples and sending them to our laboratory anyway. So just broadening it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, a few questions from the viewers at the moment. Obviously, it is early days, but we don't have an understanding of the pricing structure, model / licensing. When could this be more or less demonstrated towards the market, and more or less on top of that, how much per test might flow back to us?
Excellent questions. So we will be launching into sites, and I was actually working on it this morning with a license agreement where we provide the test. So we will, in some centres, well, the centres that we're talking to at the moment, the model is we have a room, we collect the blood, we have a centrifuge there if we need to spin it down, and then we have the logistics. So we pay for a fee to be in their premises, similar to a pathology model. And then we have a commercial agreement that sits with that. Initially, the test will be $300 out of pocket. And people say, where did you get that price from? Basically, if you have a contrast mammogram at the moment, so this is where the lady is told, you need to have a more a further diagnostic test, a contrast mammogram out of pocket is $300. Mm-hmm. And so when we've done our focus groups within Australia, $300 was price tolerance. Obviously, the intention is to get that down over time with volumes. And then in the US, the price point for market entry will be about $600 US, which is where we've been. And that's come from patient advocacy groups and discussions with various interested parties.
Just on that then, is there a possibility for the Australian government or New South Wales government to step in to give a little bit of subsidies, or is there a bit more of a waiting period with regards to that?
That's another excellent question. Mark Butler attended the opening of our laboratory, and we saw him again a few weeks ago. And I made it clear that, they're funding PSE tests for men. So providing that the clinicians and the regulatory authorities are happy with our sensitivity and specificity, it takes on average about 3 years for reimbursement to come through on tests. We've also met the Treasurer, and he's well aware, and we've been working with the breast cancer community, So Brave, Sydney Breast Cancer Foundation, and the advocacy groups will be working with us to, work closer with government. And I think it'll be very difficult. We'll obviously have to do a health economics paper to justify, but we know if you get a breast cancer stage 0 to stage 1, the health economics are far better than stage 4 from a financial perspective. But from a female perspective, the surgical intervention, the treatment, is far less and a better outcome.
Absolutely. Well, seems like a no-brainer. So we'll wait and see what they come back with. But mainly for yourself as well, how are you going to advertise or market BCAL out to the general public as well?
Yeah, that's the main thing is, as I said earlier, is the clinician's confidence. And at the moment, educating general practitioners is very important. And so some of GPs we've been working with, we're in the new age now. So we've been talking to Best Practice, which is the largest general practitioner medical software company. We've also been speaking to Genie, which is the largest patient management software for specialists. And we'll be working with them on, they have regular monthly updates. And we'll also be doing webinars and education in terms of what the breast test means. We have to educate the clinical community before, obviously females are aware of what we're doing, but there's nothing more disheartening to a general practitioner if a patient goes in and says, I want this blood test, and the doctor doesn't know anything about it. So educating the general practitioners and educating them through their existing networks. Of course, we'll have webinars, we'll have information nights at Sydney Breast Clinic, which we've got a few organised already, but it's about educating where the test is available, what does it mean, can they speak to a surgeon? So it's all that clinical advice and guidance, and we're in the process of preparing that literature for women and also for the clinicians.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got another question here. With US 600 tests, how much flows back to us? Is there a third party over there who does tests? What flows back to us? Do we license it to others to do?
Excellent. So the US is a very large fragmented market. And so we're actually looking, we've been working with a company called Prospection, which does data analytics. And so we need to enter the US strategically. So with certain states where there's insurance reimbursement, and we can actually identify how many surgeons or how many mammograms are being undertaken for diagnostic or for routine screening. So our market entry is going to be very strategic. We're not going to be all things to all people in all states immediately. You will see in the not too distant future, we've been collecting samples in the US for a long time. Dr. John Hurrell, our previous CEO, who was the head of business development for Quest Diagnostics for 8 years, he's launched about 70 to 80 molecular tests in the US. He, and he is the expert in this area. So we will highly likely have our own laboratory within the US, and we'll be shipping those samples to us, and we'll be processing them initially, similar to what Pacific Edge have been doing with the bladder cancer test. Again, very fortunate we've got David Darling on our board. He launched a bladder cancer diagnostic test in the US not too long ago, and hopefully we're learning from some of his mistakes real time, and also from some of the positives. So initially it will be through our laboratory, but we will have to go with laboratory partners in the US, I think, at some stage, because of the sheer demand and volume.
Yeah, absolutely. And hence, on top of that, entering the US market is a milestone down the track, I believe, or
it is a milestone. I mean, as I said, John's there, based in the US. He's based in Indiana, originally Australian. We'll be building that team, and there'll be an announcement very soon in relation to that.
Love to hear it. Well, for those, we've just got a few little questions just coming in now, but just while they wrap up those questions, Jayne, for those new investors and current shareholders, what are some of the final comments that you'd like to leave them?
Biotech is not an easy sector to invest in, so I have complete respect. You have to be a long-term investor. It's been 14 years. I think when we started generating revenues and we've proven to the market that we're not just gonna, we actually deliver to the market, the share price will look after itself. I'm the biggest shareholder in this. I've invested a lot of my own personal money in the company because I've had to actually make this happen. And I've never asked anybody to put $1 of capital into this company without doing it myself. So, and most of the board have done exactly the same thing. They've actually personally invested in this, and the returns will speak for themselves. So not only is this a great financial investment from a commercial return, but it will also make a fundamental difference to so many women in society by improving survivability outcomes and early diagnosis for women with breast cancer. So you've got two things: you've done good and you'll make a return on your investment.
Love to hear it. And I'll say definitely, probably on behalf of some shareholders, that the commitment that you've shown towards the team and as well as towards the company is, as you said, you put your money where your mouth is. You've been doing it yourself too. So very much appreciated. Obviously, for members and guests, if you want to get direct questions to Jayne, what would be the best way to, if they have any further questions, to reach out?
Yeah, I think they can. For any interested people there, even in our clinical studies, please go to the BCAL Diagnostics website, and you can look there to, if you want to participate in some of the clinical studies. We'll always be doing research and development, although what the push is commercialisation now. And you can reach out to me directly on my email, and it's jshaw@bcaldiagnostics.com. Very happy for you to come and have a look around the laboratory, meet our wonderful team. So reach out.
Lovely, beautiful, beautiful. Well, for everyone that maybe turned up a little bit late or didn't see the whole webinar, this will be up on YouTube, so you'll have a chance to rewatch this. And apart from that, Jayne, thank you very much for your time today. We'll look forward to hear some more about the milestones later down the track, and hopefully do another webinar soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Codes BDX, if you're interested. Thank you very much for your help and support.
Beautiful. Thank you. Bye.